Welcome to Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy. I play on the Xbox Series X via backwards compatibility. It's also available on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, PC, and Nintendo Switch. I also played it way back when on the PC. So let's get into the story. You play as Jaden, your custom created character. They managed to assemble their own lightsaber, a near impossible feat, except for I don't really think that it is. But that got the attention of the Jedi Order led by Luke Skywalker, and you, along with a group of other Force sensitives, are going to his Jedi Academy to train. But on your way there, your ship is shot down and you see some creepy Sith stuff going on, and well, during your training you have to investigate a little. This leads you to find the Cult of Ragnos, which they're, devoted to the Sith Lord Ragnos. And you being Jedi have to do what you have to do and stop the Sith. And I'm gonna say there are things in here that are like just some of the most horrible twists and turns. There's a character who you know is gonna turn because, well, I mean, pretty much you meet him and you know. But that being said, I think it's a fine story. It's not gonna be a story that's just gonna blow your mind and you're gonna be so enthralled in it that you need it and just all of it. But it's good enough. Let's get into the audio, and the first thing I'm gonna say is the music it's good enough. It's sufficiently Star Wars. You definitely feel those Star Wars vibes throughout the game. As for the sound effects, I mean, they are very aged, but they work well. And the voiceover work is hit or miss. Some do better than others. Overall, I don't think any of it is necessarily mind-blowing, but it's all done well enough. It hits that mark where even the lesser stuff isn't so bad, but none of it is award-winning. Let's get into the gameplay mechanics and whatnot, and this is very mission by mission, and I mean that. You literally select your basically tasks that are for the Jedi Order to just deal with. They need help, they need investigating. Those don't necessarily progress the main story. Some of them are tied to it in ways, and some of them do kind of involve it, but most of them are just, I'd say they're side missions, but they're really not because you have to complete them, but you pick them from a list. Then you complete, I think it's 4 out of the 5, and you can continue on with the story or still complete the 5th and then continue on with the story. At which point in time you get a story mission and then you get a new batch of not quite side missions. Oh, I also forgot to say, this is a third-person action game and a first-person shooter at the same time. Which I'm going to say is kind of cool. When you're running around doing lightsaber stuff, it's all third-person, choppy stuff, but then when you're using blasters or grenades or whatever, which you get to select between missions, then it's a first-person shooter, which does kind of match up with the origins of the game, so I think that's actually cool, and I did enjoy that, because it gave you better shooting mechanics than I was necessarily expecting. And yes, I did play this a long time ago, so give me a break. It's almost like playing it brand new again. There's a mix of platforming and combat in every mission, really, and it can be a bit rough. The combat isn't super evolved. It's not necessarily something that we're used to now. It's a lot of choppy, trying to hit them, moving around, circling, just a lot of movement and not necessarily a ton of skill involved in the lightsaber combat. I think lightsaber combat has come a long way since the days of this game. That being said, it does function, and it's not like that necessarily holds the game back or ruins it. It's just one of those things where historically we have come a long way. As for the shooting, I actually really liked it. I think it worked well. I liked the variety of the weapons. But then let's get into the other part of being a Jedi, your Force abilities. And this game actually does the whole, you can use dark side abilities as well as light side abilities. And they even tell you dark side abilities aren't inherently evil. It's what you do. So I thought that was cool. Not that I ended up using them. I honestly didn't use a ton of Force abilities. I found that healing and Force speed were 99.9% of what I needed, unless I had to solve a small barely puzzle. When you're fighting the Sith enemies, they're on that Force speed and you can choppy faster than they can, so you tend to win those duels. And overall, while it's not like a crazy deep game from a gameplay mechanics standpoint, I had a lot of fun with it. Okay, let's move on to the controls, and here's where the game gets a little rough. While I think the aiming works very well and I found the controls to be responsive, I found the movement to be horrible. I mean, it's pretty sloppy, it's very rough. There is a distinct lack of precision in moving your character around, which is honestly more noticeable in the platforming and the third-person camera angle than when you're doing the first-person stuff. But also, I think one of the worst things, at least on controller, I'm not going to say on computer, but on controller, is cycling through your force abilities. Also, I think the way the controller is mapped out is, oh, wow, not awesome. Like, you eventually get used to it and it works, but first getting into it is a bit of a challenge. But let's get on to the graphics and visuals, and I mean, it's an old game. We're talking, this is nearly a 21-year-old game, so this is not new by any stretch of the imagination. It's pretty dated looking. I will say though, when I was doing the character creation, which I had to do twice because I forgot you have to manually save in this game and I died and I had to recreate my character. But I gotta say, I actually think that you get a decent choice in your character, human, alien, whatever. They each have a decent number of outfits, tops and bottoms that you can rotate through. I wish there was better choices in the lightsaber department, but overall I was actually impressed with that. Two things I was really impressed with were when you have your lightsaber out, there's a couple levels with rain, like they hit your lightsaber blade and evaporate. I think that's a cool detail from a 20-year-old game. As well as when you run your lightsaber into the wall, it burns on the wall. Another cool detail in that game. Everything else visually has aged really badly, which I mean shouldn't be entirely surprising, you know, given the age of this game. That being said, I do think all the art style, all the designs, they do a great job of capturing that Star Wars feel, especially the expanded universe, which I know is no longer canon, and I don't care because I think they told some awesome stories in there and you had some enjoyable experiences, and most of the best video games were from then. But I think capturing the different worlds that you go to, I mean, they are what you expect from a Star Wars game. Gotta have some desert, gotta have some jungle, gotta have a city, etc. This does have some cool Sith temples and whatnot, but I think the designs of all of those are really well done and really well implemented in this game. I think the visualization of the Force powers is also well done. I mean, the detail isn't there, the graphical fidelity is not there, but the design is really cool. And as I mentioned, while lightsaber combat has come a great way, I think that shows here as well, because the lightsaber combat is very basic, the animations for it is much more basic, your movement is much more basic, and I think we've come very far since then, but it works well enough in context of what you're playing. So to get into the wrap up, to put it very simply, yeah, this is an old game, but it actually still plays well. I mean, well enough. I still had fun with it, and it was kind of like replaying it all over again for me, and yeah, it's not the strongest game, it's far from perfect in my opinion, but it was really enjoyable. I had fun with it. So at the price point, I don't have a problem recommending it. Okay, in the comments down below, why don't you tell me what's your favorite lightsaber color? And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share and subscribe. Have a good one.